For the first time ever, Unlimited Sports is releasing a podcast. The Unlimited Sports Podcast Network is here. This one is specifically about the NBA. I'm your host, Austin Orman. Joining me today, Logan Scrabble, Elam Hansen. Guys, we've had this cooking for a while. NBA season still young. A couple games in so far, but still a lot to talk about. We finally get a chance to sit down and do this. I'm excited.
Oh, I'm pumped, man.
Yeah, this is one of the biggest hype seasons in the NBA that I can remember in a long time, so I'm really looking forward to talking about it.
The thing at Unlimited Sports that we do and we want to think about is we want to serve or cover underserved sports. That was kind of the ethos of the class going into the year. Mm-hmm. And so people are probably asking, okay, why in the world are you talking about the NBA? Just listen to our open. That's why we're talking about the NBA here in Nebraska. People don't know anything about it. If you have to ask if the Cardinals are an NBA team and they struggle to name 5 players, yeah, that's why we're talking about the NBA.
Not to mention someone believed that an NBA team was coming to Nebraska. So
absolutely.
Yes, that is the thing. Nebraska, of course, not an NBA talent hotbed by any means. There are a couple players there now, though. Isaiah Roby has made the Dallas Mavericks roster. He's there with them. And then James Palmer Jr., Evan Taylor, former Huskers, are on the Clippers G League affiliate team. Mm-hmm. They're still going through training camp right now. That's the loosest Nebraska NBA connection we have right now, and the tightest
absolutely.
At the same time. There's just not a whole lot. But it's something. So we're here to fill the people in about the NBA, get them set for the season, because I'm with you, Elam. It's going to be a fun one.
Yes, it is. I'm really looking forward to it. So Western Conference up first, right?
Yeah, we're starting in the West. We're just going to jump right into it, stop beating around the bush. We're just going for it. Do you want to do division or alphabetical?
Well, why don't we just go alphabetical?
We'll go alphabetical. Alphabetical it is. So that leads us off with probably the team of the offseason.
Oh, absolutely.
Out west. Well, East as well, but team of the offseason, Los Angeles Clippers. What an offseason they had. They get Kawhi Leonard. They get Paul George. They lose their draft picks for eternity.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy. The Clippers have become one of the hottest topics of the NBA, and not to mention they've come so far since the controversial topics with Donald Sterling a few years back, and they really kind of hit rock bottom. But props to their new owner, and they're just really killing it right now. So we'll see what happens.
For sure. They've really established themselves, not only with their 2 stars that they have, but their bench depth, their good mix of offense and defense. They still have Patrick Beverley. They still have Landry Shamet. He's a sniper with Patrick Patterson as well. That's a really dangerous team out there for sure.
Yes, and not to mention, Paul George has not seen the floor yet this year, and they still look like a really good team. They handled the Lakers. They handle the Warriors. Granted, the Warriors are pretty beat up right now. We'll get to that in a bit, but Paul George-less Clippers look really good, so we'll see what happens when he gets on the floor. It's going to be even better than they already are. So
some people in the offseason were talking about Paul George as a top 8 player in the NBA. I don't know if I go that far with him necessarily. Last year, he was so good for Oklahoma City. That was the best year of his career, without a doubt. Kawhi Leonard, though, clearly in the conversation for best player in basketball.
Absolutely.
He's on that short list. I still think LeBron's up there. Anthony Davis is up there. Giannis is up there.
Right. Kevin Durant when he comes back.
KD, yeah. Mm-hmm. So those are probably the top 4 or 5, and then from there, it's semantics. Do you like Jokic? I don't know, but Kawhi Leonard has killed dynasties before. You know, he killed the Heat when he was a member of the Spurs, might have just killed the Warriors, and now he's looking to bring a second team their first NBA championship. He brought Toronto one last year, looking to get the Clippers one this year.
Yes, for sure. And I know Kawhi Leonard, I think he took pride in the fact that he kind of ended the Oracle era in a bad way, and he put a bad taste into the opening of the Chase Center as well for the Warriors. So he had a hand in both of that for that dynasty.
in my opinion, I think if Kawhi Leonard gets an NBA championship with his third team, and the first year being on the Clippers, I think he is the baddest man in the NBA by a long shot. Who else has done that? LeBron, he might do that, but he hasn't done it to the level that Kawhi Leonard did it. Kawhi Leonard didn't have a lot around him in Toronto. He did have some talent, but he didn't have Lakers talent. He didn't have an Anthony Davis, so...
You're telling me Pascal Siakam isn't Anthony Davis?
I'm telling you that. Yeah, I know Siakam puts up numbers, but he's not. We'll see what happens in a couple years with him. But if Kawhi can get one done in LA with the Clippers, he's up there with the Michael Jordan, LeBron, GOAT talk, in my opinion.
Are the Clippers your pick for NBA champions this year?
No.
Yes, they are for me. For me right now, they seem like the deepest team. It's very early in the season, so we don't know how injuries might play out. But As I've seen, they still have Lou Williams. They still have Montrezl Harrell. They were both in the conversation for Sixth Man of the Year. Obviously, Lou Williams winning that award. So their bench is just amazing already as it is. Like I said, with a mix of offense and defense, they have Patrick Beverley just jawing away at the opponents. And you've got Kawhi just sitting in the background. He doesn't have to do that. He just can be himself. He can go out there and he can be an assassin. So I think for me right now, I look at them as the favorite definitely for the championship, and so far that's who I'm looking at.
Elam, why do you say no?
I think no matter what, the championship is going to come out of LA, but I think it's going to come from the other side of the city, from the Lakers. I just think that when Anthony Davis and LeBron really get a lot of chemistry and a lot of playing time together, you've already seen it a little bit. They're both leading in a lot of categories. They're going to develop this chemistry and become better teammates, and I think they just got too much size on that team. Nobody's going to keep them off the free throw line. Nobody's going to keep them out of the lane, and I think once Kyle Kuzma is healthy, once he comes back, that's going to add another perimeter shooter, and he also can get to the rack as well. So I think that the Lakers just, their experience and their size is going to overmatch the Clippers in the end. I just think that the overall talent level, and you don't want to see LeBron with Anthony Davis in the playoffs in a 7-game series, in my opinion.
And I guess that's the question, is if they can both stay healthy. LeBron is aging, Anthony Davis is a little fragile. If they both make it to the playoffs, if they're both healthy, yes, you're absolutely correct. But that's something that we'll have to wait and see for. We'll
talk about the playoffs and our projections for the West coming up at the end of the podcast. But from potential first to potential worst, the Clippers to the Grizzlies now. Moving on with our second team capsule here. Not much going on. The Grizzlies traded away Mike Conley over the offseason. Grit and grind is no longer. Instead of Mike Conley, you get a little more flash with John Morant. We've already seen him outduel Kyrie Irving, 30 points, 9 assists in a game for John Morant, leading the Rookie of the Year conversation only because Zion Williamson hasn't played, which we'll touch on later. The one guy I think is a swing factor for Memphis moving forward, Brandon Clark. If he can develop alongside Jaren Jackson Jr., those are two starting caliber big men with an explosive point guard. They're definitely pieces in Memphis right now.
Absolutely. Summer League MVP, correct? I believe he really showed out there, and there's a few players in this league that really made a step forward in Summer League. He's one of them, and so there's definitely an opportunity for him. I know Dylan Brooks played well in the preseason. Jaren Jackson Jr. is definitely an animal down low if he can really develop, but they really have some pieces they can use going forward. Maybe we'll see what happens this season, but definitely for the future, I think they're in a pretty good place.
Yeah, I think the key for them definitely, in my opinion, is John Morant. If he can live up to his hype, I think that's really going to help them moving forward. I know a lot of teams these days are kind of making a single guy the face of their program. Look at Trae Young with the Hawks. They have off to a good start. He's leading the league in points per game. That's only through 2 games, but it's still an impressive feat in your second year. So I think if John Morant can, start to lead them in the right direction, they're going to be well off.
Who did Mike Conley get traded to? The Jazz. That's our next team up here in this preview. That is one heck of a starting lineup for Quinn Snyder. You got Gobert, Mitchell, Conley, Ingles, Bojan Bogdanovic as a pickup as well. This is a deep Jazz team as well. Utah's not quite good enough to get over that Lakers-Clippers hump, in my opinion, but it won't be because of their offense now. I just think it's more on what Los Angeles did than what Utah did. Utah definitely got better this offseason.
Right, and I think they're really sitting there waiting in the wings. Pure talent-wise, definitely the LA teams have more, but with the depth that they have, if the LA teams do struggle, if they do lose some players, the Lakers are not the deepest team in the world. The Jazz are definitely waiting there, and definitely fundamentally, I know Gobert has proven that he can come out and play. Conley has struggled a little bit. He's definitely not been great towards the beginning of the season, but he has shown that he is someone that you can rely on, that he can get over that hump. And I also don't see any crazy personalities on this roster either. It's a really solidly built foundation that I think will really gel cohesively.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to watch Donovan Mitchell alongside Rudy Gobert this year, because Donovan Mitchell is that guy that you just are waiting for him to get to that next level, of competition. He's already put up great numbers. He plays great defense, but when is he going to consistently average, 25 a game and, maybe get some triple doubles, stuff like that. So I think that, if he can continue to improve alongside Rudy Gobert, with their defense, I think they can have a good run.
The swing skill for Mitchell, for me, is his three-point shooting. He shot 34% as a rookie, 36% last year. A lot of those were contested looks as well. He was Utah's primary and secondary shot creator. A lot of them were tough off the bounce looks. If he can get some more catch and shoot looks from Mike Conley or create more for them, that goes a long way for Utah if he can be efficient.
Absolutely, absolutely.
The other thing with Utah is I've wanted to put them as my 3 seed in the West. I don't know if I can buy them over Denver, though. I don't know which of those two teams I trust more yet.
I think that, in my opinion, Denver has more offense than the Jazz do. I think Jazz are missing one scorer, in my opinion, and maybe they can get to that next level. But, I just don't see the production from them quite like I see in Denver.
Right, and I guess it also depends what Donovan Mitchell does. He's proven that in his first few years he can be that scorer, but he definitely is not the same as what Jokic has done. Jokic is great at scoring, but I think one of his big things is, as we'll talk about, he's a great playmaker. And while the Jazz have all those pieces, we just have to wait and see how they gel to really fit together.
Speaking of pieces gelling, that's what the Kings are hoping for out in Northern California. Fun, exciting young team last year. I loved watching the Kings. Not off to a great start this year. Their defense is getting shredded. Marvin Bagley out with a thumb injury for an extended period of time. This is a team that was going to be my sleeper pick for the 6th or 7th seed, not even, fighting for that 8th seed. I'm a big Kings guy. Long live Harry Giles. Marvin Bagley's fun. They re-signed Buddy Hield, 4 years, $90 million deal in that range. That's a fun young team. They've struggled out of the gates. I'm not giving up on them yet. They've got some work to do.
Right. I know, definitely. I'm right there with you. Harry Giles, though, really? Is that your...
Love me some Harry Giles. I mean, they did get Dwayne Dedmon as well. That's a good piece for them.
For sure. Yeah. One of my biggest fears for the Kings is with the new coach, with Luke Walton. So far, his rotations have really proven to be quite something. What he's done so far is he's taken his starters out there and he's played them, and then he's kind of acted like a high school JV team. He's kind of flipped them out for 5 bench players, then 5 starters, then 5 bench players. So when the 5 bench players are out there, they just get hammered. So I'd like to see some better rotation management there, and I think that's something that will come once you know your personnel a little better. And
there's no production. I'm looking at their scores from the recent game with the Jazz, and they didn't have anybody over 11 points. Granted, they had a lot of guys score, but their high score was with 11 points. Dwayne Dedmon, their center.
Right.
You just can't have that. Buddy Hield, one of the best young players in the league, he had 3 points. Yeah. That's just not going to do it. And so I think, they got to look at who's going to start scoring the ball for them. You look at Harrison Barnes, who's been there before, and De'Aaron Fox and Buddy Hield. They have a lot of talent. They just got to figure out how to get the ball in the hole.
For sure. And I think that's one of the things. If you can put Buddy Hield out there with that bench unit, or De'Aaron Fox out there with that bench unit, where they might not have as many scorers, hopefully that could start to increase. So they're not really they don't have to share the ball so much. And I'm really looking too at Bogdanovich. There's been some rumors that he's not super happy with Sacramento, but I'm really hoping that situation works out, because I think they have some really good young pieces and they're really up and coming. Last year they were able to be on that 9th line, and so they're just waiting there on deck. And I'm hoping that they go up instead of down. Not all projections have them going in that positive way. I think 538 has them as the 2nd worst team in the West as their prediction, right above the Grizzlies. So that's a really interesting one. So I guess we'll have to wait and see.
I think with Anthony Davis and Kawhi Leonard coming to the West makes it a lot tougher for the Kings, to have consistency, night in and night out. So we'll see what happens.
Especially in that division. Division. You got to play those teams, 5 times each during the year?
Exactly.
To your guys' points about rotations and offense, respectively, Sacramento's most used lineup right now, Nemanja Bjelica, Harrison Barnes, Dwayne Dedmon, Buddy Hield, and De'Aaron Fox, has played 24 minutes. That's not a lot, even early in the season here. Offensive rating of 86 if average is 100, so you're 14% worse than league average. Defensive rating 140.
Wow.
That's a net rating of negative 54. That's how bad Sacramento's most used lineup has been so far this year, according to NBA.com's advanced stats lineups.
Absolutely. And I don't know where you're going to get that from. You said that did not include Bogdanovich, correct? Mm-mm. That did not obviously include Marvin Bagley. So hopefully those things can fix. I'm not even sure with Harry Giles anymore. If I'm correct, he didn't even travel with the team to India when they went there. So that'll just be, there's some interesting wild cards that definitely you have to shake things up, because obviously those lineups aren't working as of now, and so we'll have to just wait and see how the Kings play out.
Big game tonight against the Nuggets. We'll see if they can get the offense rolling a little bit at home, so we'll see what happens. First home game.
Speaking of wild cards, the Lakers. Everyone expects them to be so good, so talented. They've got like 3.5 NBA players on their team, I think. Bron, AD, Danny Green. Other than that, I'm not buying Dwight Howard yet. Kyle Kuzma's overrated as heck. Alex Caruso isn't a real player. Quinn Cook rode Steph Curry's coattails.
Hot take.
That's what I'm here for. So the Lakers will be good. They'll finish at the top of the standings. If you have 2 of the 5 best players, your floor is only so low and your ceiling is, you don't have one. I just don't trust the Lakers, though. I just don't right now.
I think that they have a lot of players in classic Los Angeles Lakers fashion. I think there's no other way to do it. You got to get Dwight Howard. You got to get Alex Caruso. You have to have Rondo. You have to have those wild cards. Last year, you could see with Beasley, with Stevenson, they did not work out. This year, they're looking a little better, and there's still a long ways to go, like any other team. But things could really fall off. But so far, Dwight Howard has fit in, played his role, I would say. I'd say JaVale McGee, with his personality, he doesn't have to be anything big in the post when you have Anthony Davis. You've got LeBron, and he makes everybody better around him. I mean, except for Caldwell Pope, of course. He can't seem to get it going. But everybody else, I'm not really sure. Jared Dudley, they've got a lot of different pieces, but hopefully I would say they can hopefully put it together. Quinn Cook is a solid backup guard. I would say Danny Green is a good shooter. Troy Daniels is an underrated shooter in this league if you look at his statistics. So I'm hoping they can put that together because, they've got a really tough divisional foe there.
You mentioned Jared Dudley. I was a little surprised the Lakers didn't get Dudley and Trevor Ariza. I would have thought they would have targeted both of them over the offseason. I think both of them might have been a little pricey, but you're the Lakers. Spend your money, get your guys. I think those are some pieces that they need, 3-and-D-like players. Jared Dudley would be a huge piece on this team. I don't know if that's a good thing for Los Angeles, but at the very least, he's steady and can be out on the court, and you don't worry about it.
And I'm not sure exactly. We'll see. I was expecting them to sign more of a Kyle Korver, more of a shooter, being with LeBron before, but I know they do have Danny Green. I hope they can develop more shooting with Caldwell Pope, with those kind of players. So we'll have to wait and see. And then I am a bigger fan of Kyle Kuzma. I think that in a role that he will be in, I am hopeful that he can thrive off of LeBron and AD.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but back when LeBron was on the Heat, wasn't Danny Green kind of that guy on the Spurs that was shooting threes in the finals that was just kind of killing them each night? Absolutely. I think that's who Danny Green's going to be for them when it comes to playoff time because, as long as they're healthy, you're going to get guys guarding LeBron and Anthony Davis. And even if Kyle Kuzma is healthy, they're going to be swarming them. And Danny Green's going to be that guy that's open, and he's going to be a key player for them, I think, when it comes later in the season. But when you look at their lineup, it just comes to health. You have LeBron, who's aging. Anthony Davis is probably in his prime, but then you have Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee. Each big guys, but they've been there before. They know how to win. JaVale McGee, has a championship with the Warriors. Dwight Howard.
Does that mean JaVale knows how to win, or JaVale was lucky to get picked up by the Warriors?
Well, it could be a little bit of both, but he knows what it takes. But the point is, I think, it just comes down to being healthy for the Lakers. You have LeBron James, you have Anthony Davis. 2 of the best players in the league, probably 2 of the top 4 or 5 players in the league. So if they can remain healthy, I think they're going to make a deep run in the playoffs.
How much help does Alex Caruso really need?
Yeah.
But anyway, I guess I would just say that, their lack of a true point guard, I hope doesn't come and bite them. I know Quinn Cook's obviously, like I said, good off the bench, but right now they're starting Bron at the point.
Which I love.
And I personally think that's amazing. I think hopefully on offense, I think that would work great. On defense, they're going to have to make sure with those fast guards on those other teams, I think they're putting Avery Bradley, which great defender, but he's getting old just like the other players. I want to hopefully, for the Lakers' sake, make sure that works out for them because LeBron's not going to be able to guard Kyrie down the court for the entire game, I wouldn't say. So I think that's one of the things is you have to look at your lineups. That's a big thing for them, like many teams, is that, AD and LeBron, they're both big guys. Kyle Kuzma is a big guy. You've got to really play with those lineups to make them work, especially because your guard spots are not your strong spots. I think you plug Danny Green in there as a great shooter, but then you still have to have another guard out there. And like I said, Caldwell Pope has not shown that this season, so we've got to find someone else.
Another team with sketchy guard play, Dallas. Luka Doncic handling the ball for the most part for them. They re-signed Steph Curry to shoot the ball in a bench role, but Dallas' season comes down to how well Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis work together. I think that's an extremely fun pairing. Can Porzingis stay healthy And can Doncic replicate his magic from last year? Early returns say yes, and I think Dallas is going to be fun.
Yeah, I think they are definitely, if you can call them a sleeper pick, I think to make the playoffs. A lot of people have been talking about them along the same vein as the Pelicans. So far, they've shown that they are very good with Kristaps. I mean, people were concerned with his injury, if he was going to come back and be okay, and so far, he's really shown it. He's the range that a man can have when he's 7 foot or whatever, I mean, that's incredible. And so Doncic, he'll do his thing. Porzingis, he'll do his thing. It's just up to those other players. I think, when they're big guy, they're still figuring out with whether it's Powell, whether it's Kleber. They're trying to figure out their point guard. Is it Jalen Brunson? They're trying to figure out who else they're putting out on that court. So it should be really interesting. I think I know on them. I think Roby, he's going to spend most of his time in the G League, but it's really nice to see a friendly face in there from Nebraska. So maybe he'll get some minutes this year.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that, especially down the stretch of the season, if they have to rest Porzingis or if they have to do anything like that, they can give a Roby a shot, because this team is definitely wide open after those two big stars.
In my opinion, I just want this team to do well. This is kind of like you got Kristaps, you got Luka Doncic, and coming from Nebraska, you want Isaiah Roby to succeed, and it would be awesome to see him to start to get onto the court a little bit more. But this feels like a team that's a couple years away. Just looking at their lineup right now with Justin Jackson and Tim Hardaway Jr., there's a lot of talent right there. Justin Jackson coming out of college, he was fantastic in college at North Carolina. So I just feel like in Luka Doncic, he's in his second year. Kristaps is in his third or fourth year. These guys, this is a young team, and I think they have a lot of potential. So I think that they're kind of around that 7th or 8th seed in the West right now. Come April, but we'll see if like you said, if Kristaps and Luka can remain healthy and continue to get production from somebody else other than them too. I think that'll help them out a lot.
And we'll see where this goes. I'm hopeful, and definitely this season I think is one to build on. They haven't made the playoffs for a few years, and so moving on with the post-Dirk era, I hope they can really make some strides, put themselves in position to make the playoffs, and then hopefully develop that talent and potentially sign some free agents next summer that come with bigger names, maybe a more established point guard, maybe a more established wing, not starting Courtney Lee, something along those lines.
Get Seth Curry to step it up a little bit.
That's true, and I know he can be a spark plug off the bench, but right now, things are working out so far for him. So yeah. I'm going to be watching a lot of Mavericks games this year.
The last time Dallas made the playoffs was after the 2015-2016 year. They did lose in the first round. Rick Carlisle is a mad genius. I'm excited to see what he does with this team. Really good on out-of-bounds plays. I like the tempo he has Dallas playing with. He's letting Doncic push it in transition, but also he is so good at drawing up sets in the half court and letting his guys operate. I think Dallas's offense is, again, going to be absolutely fantastic. And 111.4 last year was pretty solid. Can they get it figured out on the defensive end? I'm not sure. Porzingis, if he can sit in the lane, he's got the wingspan to do it. He might need to develop a little bit more timing. Another fun team out west for me, guys, Denver. That's a team, like we mentioned before, they're in that 3-4 conversation for me. Huge pickup with Jeremy Grant. I think he's a great pickup for this team at a lot of offensive rebounding, can take some pretty tough defensive assignments. He's learned to shoot a little bit, too. He's just another fun, young piece around that core of Jokic and Murray.
Yeah. A scary team because last year, they made it to the 7th game of the Western Conference semifinals with Portland. And for them last year, it was, they're too young. They haven't been there before. Well, now they brought back basically the same roster. They've added Jeremy Grant. They've added Michael Porter Jr., and now they're experienced more. They've had a year of going through the playoffs, going through the whole regular season, making it to Game 7 with Portland. Did they also make it to a Game 7 with, I believe they made it to 2 Game 7s last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Portland took them to 7, and they had to play 7 against San Antonio in the first
exactly.
round.
And that's
broke my heart.
That's a team. That is a team to play 7 games against, though, because that is some good basketball. You got to really figure out Pop's system. So I really think that they're dangerous this year, especially with, if you look out west, LA's are great, but especially the Lakers, they're not always the most fundamentally sound team with the players, as we mentioned, that are on the court. You bring Denver in there, and Jokic could tear up JaVale McGee. He could be passing all over. Their guards, they're quick enough. They're young enough. They could tear up those Lakers guards. And while the Lakers obviously would have the best players on the court, I think Denver, obviously the deeper team. And
I think people overlook Denver, too. I think that they're sneaky good, and people probably don't realize how good Jokic really is. I mean, he's going to be he's going to be getting a lot of triple doubles this year, and he's going to be pretty consistent. He already has a triple double on the year, at least one I'm looking at here against the Suns. But I think that they're gonna win a lot of games, and I think for them it just comes down to, can they string together a good series of games when they're playing the superstars of the NBA, because the Western Conference is so stacked with stars. They're gonna get in the playoffs, barring a bad injury, but can they be successful when it comes down to the time? I think last year they were so close to getting to the Western Conference Finals, but they were just that one step, and maybe Jamal Murray will give them that extra boost. So
Nikola Jokic is one of the most unconventional looking superstars ever. The way he plays like molasses, he moves slower than molasses. Doesn't seem like there's any intensity there. But the guy, he's clairvoyant. He sees into the future. I mean, he's already been memed on Twitter for backing down Hassan Whiteside twice in the span of about 30 seconds. It felt like is what it took him. But the guy's just an absolute stud. I think Paul Millsap's a great front court partner for him as well. I don't think Jokic is quite MVP level good, but he's going to be in the top 5 for the next 5 or 6 years.
Absolutely. His fundamental game of basketball, the way that he sees the court as a big man is incredible. He plays in that high post, goes into the low post, but can also pass out in any direction. And with Denver's other weapons, a lot of them can shoot, a lot of them can drive, so they're really set up for success there.
Yeah, I think Jokic will have a top 5 MVP season. Hot take.
I don't think that's hot.
It could be. Yeah, I think it's just a normal take, but. Like last year, what did he finish in the? I don't remember what he finished in the MVP voting.
Oh, he was up there for sure.
He was up there, but he only made like $500,000 last year or something. Like, that blows my mind. This guy is putting up insane stats, and he's making way less than some of the guys out there. Granted, he's going to get paid, but it's just kind of cool to see.
For sure, and it's good to see with Denver. A few years ago they brought in some. A load of foreign centers. They brought in Jusuf Nurkic, they brought in Nikola Jokic, they brought in Joffrey Laverne. They just kind of shipped them all in, and they found who would work. And man, they really found a gem there. He really wasn't panned out. People looked at him like, wow, like you said, what is that guy going to do to us? Okay, but I think now they're all shaking their heads because here's Denver.
Jokic, 4th place in MVP voting last year, 212 points, very far behind winner Giannis Antetokounmpo. So 4th in MVP voting, but 1st in YMCA old dad basketball's heart.
Oh, 100%.
And that's what everyone loves to watch.
No kidding. Another team that I think people are going to love to watch this year, the Pelicans. This is a fun team. I think they got a lot better despite losing Anthony Davis. As good as Anthony Davis was, I think this is a good reset for the Pelicans. You get Zion Williamson in. Obviously, he's injured. But then you get Lonzo Ball, you get Brandon Ingram, you get Josh Hart from Los Angeles. Add that to Drew Holiday, free agent, signing J.J. Redick. That is a fun team. I don't think they're in the playoffs this year, but I think they are for years to come.
Right, and don't forget about Jackson Hayes. Don't forget about Derek Favors.
Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got a lot of pieces that they can work with this year that I hope that they can have some success with. They're competing right around that range with the Kings, I would say, and even the Mavericks in a lot of ways. And so while I agree, I don't think they're quite there for the playoffs yet, mostly because they are a big wild card. There's just so many young pieces. I think they are set up brilliantly for the future because last year I know their depth was not great. They were starting players you never heard of before, Kenrich Williams and Etuan Moore, and I think they got a really good opportunity this season to really just explode.
Thanks to Anthony Davis. He basically gave them the whole Lakers squad. But, I think, you saw a lot of comparison with Zion Williamson and LeBron James when he was in college and high school, and everyone's like, oh, this is the best high school player since LeBron James. Is Zion Williamson going to be able to put up the numbers that LeBron put up right away when he comes in the NBA? I think that's the biggest question mark. And I think a lot of people think he will, but he is injury prone, and he's already injured. Is it a leg injury? Something I can't remember.
Undisclosed right lower body.
Okay. Yeah. Either way, you got to remain healthy. I think he has to drop weight. He's 280 pounds?
285 pounds.
He's huge, and that helps him out, but it also hurts him, I think, because he's so heavy. I think that'll, makes him more injury prone. But, there's tons of young talent on this team. Lonzo Ball, you got Brandon Ingram, who's putting up numbers already. And that's without Zion Williamson. So, if Zion can come in and score and be consistent for them, I think that they're going to be dangerous, and I think that they are the biggest question mark of the NBA right now.
As an active purveyor of Duke basketball, I watched Zion Williamson all year last year. Injury prone is just not correct. I'm sorry. He's not injury prone. He slipped through his shoe. Like, that just doesn't happen. That's
right.
Nothing he did necessarily. And yeah, maybe he does need to lose some weight. He's not going to play at 285. He'll play at 270, 275 in that range, but just still, that's big, but that's part of his game. He needs a little bit of that weight, and it's not like it looks bad on him.
Right. I just know as a young player, especially with his play style, lives above the rim a lot. I just worry that as he grows older, if he still weighs up there, that could affect him. But we don't know that. He is the second heaviest player in the NBA, and he is 6'7". Boban is
yes.
7'3",
and he is much bigger than he is.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful. I want to see it because he seems like he's got it all. In the preseason when you watched him, he was just putting it up. He was barely missing any shots. So I'm looking forward to when he steps on the floor for the Pelicans because, man, that's going to be exciting to watch.
If he can consistently hit outside shots, he's going to be a very, very big force to reckon with as his career continues. Because everyone knows he's going to score because he's going to get to the rack and you're not going to block his dunks. He's going to get to the free throw line. Hopefully for him, he can start to, hit free throws consistently. I don't know what his numbers were on the free throw line at Duke, but
not fantastic.
Yeah, he's going to get to the free throw line. And he's going to need to develop that free throw shot because, he's your notorious drive to the hole and either dunk it or go to the free throw line.
Right. You don't want to hack a Zion.
Yeah, you don't want to get in his way.
64% on free throws at Duke last year, 33.8% from three. Made some adjustments to his form. And I think shooting 34% from three in the NBA, even 70% on free throws, that definitely helped Zion Williamson out.
So where would you say he fits as a 6'7", 285-pounder on the court? Is he a power forward for you?
I think he's a LeBron James type. He can handle the ball. You just put him anywhere, really. I mean, he can guard for the most part. He's very athletic. I don't know. I think that they're going to play him like a wild card almost.
Right. I mean, now Austin, I asked you. You said small ball center. What happens when they go against Embiid at 7 foot and Zion's got is 6'7"? Or what if they go up against those 7 foot centers?
You outscore him. You don't have to play. I mean, Embiid can get 2 points, but as wide open as the Pelicans are going to be, the odds are good you're getting a good look from three. So you won't be able to do it that way for extended stretches of time. But if you need to just blitz an opponent for 4 minutes, or you sub that lineup in when an Embiid, when a Jokic, when a Giannis goes to the bench, I think that.
Oh, for sure.
That can blitz opponents. I think, if you can get a quick 10, 12-point run there, okay, maybe you give a little bit back, but I think the offensive benefits outweigh the defensive.
Right, and I definitely think in that regard, I think they can really use him, especially bringing him in other lineups. He can 100% be used as a weapon as a small ball center. I really like that they also have Jackson Hayes, Derek Favors on the roster that they can use as a traditional center, depending on what team they're playing. So
small ball center reminds me of Isaiah Roby at Nebraska.
Oh man,
biggest man on the court at 6'8".
Not sure he was the biggest fan of that role, but he
up against those Big Ten centers every night.
Hopping across the division from New Orleans over to Houston and the Rockets, this is the science experiment of the century. James Harden and Russell Westbrook on the same team. How's it going to work? It's going to be great some nights. It's going to be drama other nights.
I think it's whoever has their night. James Harden's going to have his nights, and I think Russell Westbrook's going to have his nights. But they played together before. Granted, Harden was coming off the bench at the time, and they split up, and both of them have MVPs since. But I think what we've seen so far is that one of them's going to lead in scoring one night and the other one's going to lead in the next night, I think. And so I think if they can consistently figure out how to play with each other and get other guys involved, I think that they're going to make it work.
Phoenix. This is a team that's improved from last year. I'm a little surprised people have them better than the Kings right now. I don't know if I quite buy that out of Phoenix, but they did get actual real live NBA players this year.
Absolutely.
Believe it or not, that tends to help.
Oh, for sure. Their opening lineup is actually looking pretty solid. After that,
Well,
I'm
not
really
anymore.
sure.
DeAndre Ayton.
Well, well, Aaron Baines even better, man. But
Yeah.
they've got Devin Booker. They finally have a real point guard in Ricky Rubio, and yes, he is injury prone. He tends to go out. But when he is on the court, that is been their first point guard for a long time. Back in the day when they had like 3 point guards on the roster that were really good, and then they got rid of all of them, and now they finally have a point guard back. Kelly Oubre is a really good scorer on the wing, and then they still have Ayton when he comes back. We'll see about that, and then they have Dario Saric that they signed for the power forward spot. So I think that their starting lineup is really looking solid when they get Ayton back, and they surprised the
Clippers,
correct? So
yeah.
I think they're a dangerous team.
They have the ability to win,
sure.
you know.
And they remind me of shades of the Kings from last year when they're coming out. They're kind of surprising people. People thought, they got some talent there. They're not quite as deep. They don't quite have necessarily the same upside because they don't have all those bench players. They don't have all the scoring. Devin Booker is amazing, and he'll give you a lot. We'll see what Rubio can do. We'll see how reliable Kelly Oubre is. But for sure, I think that culture is also fitting together. I mean, Oubre and Booker. I mean, Booker was John at Patrick Beverly that entire game against the Clippers.
I love it.
So I think that really works well. And then bringing a veteran like Rubio, I hope he can show those young guys like Javon Carter, all those others that how to play. They have Tyler Johnson. They have those players on the bench, so we'll just have to wait and see. That's almost an experiment.
I think they're another one of those young teams that you look at where they have a lot of talent, kind of like the Pelicans, where they have guys that can score, but are they going to be able to consistently do it, against the superstars of the league? So
right, and I guess the good thing is I mean, they can only go up from last year, I would say. So I think
Exactly.
I think they've really got some good upside in for Phoenix's standards. I think from the past few years, I think this is really looking good for them.
a fun fact about the Suns that I learned the other day. I think since the 1970s, they are the second or third most winningest team in the NBA.
Wow.
Something that you don't really realize, but it's true.
They're just putting up good consistent
Back when the Steve Nash days, where they were
Amari,
Amari, and when they had Shaq real briefly.
Man.
So yeah, it was kind of interesting. But yeah, we'll see if the Suns can make it back to that winning culture.
Phoenix a wild card, another one for the exact opposite reasons, the Spurs.
I mean,
Old team. You know what you're getting from the Spurs,
Absolutely.
but is what you're getting enough? That remains to be
Right.
seen. San Antonio shooting for its 23rd straight NBA playoffs appearance. I'm picking the Spurs to do it, although I know not a lot are.
Now, quick straw poll. I like you just said, Austin, I'm no surprise that you're picking the Spurs to go to the playoffs. You picking the Spurs to go to the playoffs, Elam?
Yeah, I can't not pick the Spurs.
Right. I mean, every year.
How do you pick against the Spurs?
Right.
I mean, they're just that team that nobody talks about, but come springtime, they're third or fourth in the West or whatever. Or in back when they had Tim Duncan there first or second. But when's the last time that the Spurs haven't been old? I mean, it's been like 8 years, right? They just keep getting good talent. They're consistent.
So I heard a take the other day that, I mean, obviously we know Popovich, I think we can agree, is the best coach in the league, and by quite a margin. I think he puts the players he puts out there. They all have good character, and they don't have attitudes. They'd be on the bench if they had attitudes. Could you imagine Dion Waiters on the Spurs? That would be quite the show.
I kind of need that now.
Yeah, I guess so. See, as a fan of the Heat for my whole life, I know that the Spurs and the Heat have similar cultures in different ways. The Heat really develop you physically, and they have a very, very, very strenuous physical program. The Spurs develop you mentally. The Spurs, you will have the mindset when you come to the Spurs. You will play the right way.
Yep.
You will play
fundamentally
as a team.
sound.
So, if somebody posed the question between the Spurs and the Heat, I mean, trying to combine those would be great. What's the last player that has played for the Spurs and the Heat?
Oh goodness.
I want
to say like Avery Johnson, but I don't know if that's
been a
true.
long time.
Yeah.
just a fun fact. But I'm really looking at the Spurs to do what they've been always doing. I'm not doubting them. I'm saying they're making the playoffs because they still have LaMarcus. They still have DeMar DeRozan. And while
DeJounte Murray, he's my
for
boy.
a lot of teams, yeah, he's back this year. For a lot of teams with that talent, they might not be great. With the Spurs, I can't doubt that.
The craziest thing to me was last year the Spurs had the 7th best offense in the NBA. shooting mid-range jumpers. Like that, how? Like how does that happen?
I think good coaching, good offense. They get open looks.
Like you guys were saying, playing to his team's strength. That's what he
Right.
does. Every other team in the league is giving up those mid-range shots because they're not, analytically efficient. But the Spurs have two guys that can knock them down. So that's what they built their offense on. That bench unit, though, bombed away from three. The starters didn't really do it. The last year with Bertans and Mills and Bellinelli, Derek White even sometimes would shoot. So they almost played two different styles last year. The big storyline for the Spurs, they lost Marcus Morris. They had to get rid of Davis Bertans to lose Marcus Morris.
That was a tough loss. And Marcus Morris, so I think they're circling that Knicks date on the calendar. I think Popovich secretly has a calendar somewhere in his office because that was quite disrespectful to do to the Spurs of any team. So.
No kidding on that one. Moving right along here on the Unlimited Sports NBA Preview Podcast. We're in the Western Conference now. 4 teams to get through here. Next one on the list, the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're supposed to be bad. They might actually be decent.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the big question with them is
Chris Paul.
Is this
Chris
team
Paul.
Is this team going to be the team we see come spring? If you just look at the talent, they still have Chris Paul. They still have Steven Adams. They still have Gallinari. They have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They have a lot of picks. So, and those picks that are from other teams. So, do they have a motivation to tank this year? Because it not really their picks. They're from the other teams. So we'll see with the players they have now. With the West, it might be tough to make the playoffs, but they are in that range with the Mavericks, with that discussion where they might not have quite the same upside, but they have the talent to at least try to get it done. And so we'll see. I mean, against the Warriors, they dogged them completely. So that was something.
I think. Well, the Warriors are a completely different story, but I don't think the Thunder have what it takes in the West to consistently win games to get in the top 8 seeds. Does Chris Paul really want to be there? Like, who knows? We when he got traded there, everyone thought he was going to leave. Everyone thought they're cleaning house. It was just a temporary thing, but he's still on the team. He's putting up okay numbers, and you're going to get your numbers out of Steven Adams, and Gallinari and all them, but. It's Chris Paul's aging, and I don't know. I just don't see them consistently putting it together.
Yeah, personally, I think I'm not picking them to go to the playoffs. I think they're going to have nights like they had against the Warriors where they put it together, and they're gonna they're not completely incompetent out there. They've got players. It's just we'll see what the motives are of Chris Paul, of the management, where they go with certain players, even Gallinari. I believe he's on an expiring contract. He's in a contract year, so. For a team that might be looking to dump a contract, and they could get another pick if they want to.
I think that's what they're planning.
Perfect player.
That's what their plan is.
If they throw Gallinari to the Heat, for example, where the Heat have a hole at the 4, if they throw Gallinari to any of those other teams, that he might be a piece that could take the Lakers to the next step if they need him at the end, or the Jazz, or any of those teams. So we'll just have to see where the Thunder are come spring.
Oklahoma City is the new Boston. Stockpiling picks, they're more important than players. That's my take on Oklahoma City. The next team that's fighting for a playoff spot in the West, the Minnesota Timberwolves. I've been impressed with them so far this year. Karl Anthony Towns is
That's all I'm
Steph Curry,
say.
essentially, right now. He's been absolutely insane. Andrew Wiggins has had a couple good nights for him. It's the Karl Anthony Towns show now. Ryan Saunders has a system that's going to play to Karl Anthony Towns' strengths, and I cannot wait to see him fully unleashed.
Karl Anthony Towns is unreal. He's I think I was looking earlier today. Let me see if I can find it here. He's tied for third in the league with 3-pointers made per game. That's a center. Yeah. That just doesn't happen. And he's in the top 5, top 10 in all the other, categories. Granted, he doesn't have a lot around him, but when it comes to the MVP voting, watch out for this guy. That's kind of my hot take is watch out for Karl Anthony Towns when it comes to the MVP voting, because night in, night out, he's going to put up numbers.
He's played a lot of games, too. He's not some guy you have to worry about missing time. He played all 82 games his first 3 years in the league, missed a whole 5 games last year. He's played, obviously, the first few games so far this year, but he's going to be out there night in, night out for the Timberwolves. They're going to run everything through him.
They're going to need him.
Yeah, he nearly had a triple-double in the first half not too long ago. The guy is just absolutely ludicrously insane. I'm glad we're seeing him fully unleashed.
Yeah, and I'm hopeful. I say this every year, Andrew Wiggins, hopefully he can come out. Against the Heat, he really came out at the end. He scored. He put a barrage on. He hit 2 or 3 straight 3-pointers to put him away. The Heat, without their stars, were leading And Andrew Wiggins finally came out and said, you know what, I'm going to play. And I know that Ryan Saunders had come out and said, maybe we'll try to formulate it differently. We'll put him at more of the point guard position. We'll have him handle the ball a little more. And so far, it's worked better for him. For Wiggins standards, he has not really worked out in Minnesota. So I'm hopeful that he can step up, because one of the things with the MVP voting for Towns is he can be really good, but a lot of times in the NBA, like any other sport, your team also has to be pretty good for your MVP chances to be good.
Yeah,
so I'm
exactly.
just hopeful that a player like Wiggins, those other players can step up. I think they're
Jeff
starting
Teague.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's some players on that roster that really. We don't know what they're going to do. So I'm really hopeful, because Cat really deserves it. He's an amazing player in this league, and a lot of people don't get to watch him because the Timberwolves aren't on very much. So.
And you want the Timberwolves to do well. I mean, when we were growing up, they had Kevin Garnett, when we were really young, and they're a really good team. But just kind of ever since he left and Kevin Love left, they had Kevin Love and he left, they just haven't been good. And so you just kind of want them to succeed. So we'll see what happens. But Karl-Anthony Towns, I think personally right now, he's my favorite to win the MVP.
Another guy, another dark horse MVP candidate in that same division, Damian Lillard. He seems like he's always in that conversation as well, in that top 5, top 6-ish range for MVP voting for what he does for Portland. But right now it's Lillard, CJ McCollum, and whatever's left of Hassan Whiteside.
Man, Hassan Whiteside, good luck with the Blazers. As a Heat fan growing up all my life, you can have him. He's really been putting up some points. He does get stats. Hassan Whiteside is a very big stats guy in terms of getting rebounds. He rebounds the ball. He chases blocks. And that hasn't really been horrible for Portland so far. He is a rental until Nurkic comes back, as we can see it. But they did also lose Mo Harkless, which was a great pickup for the Clippers, and they lost Al-Farouq Aminu. That's crazy defense on your wings that now what do you do with? They really haven't been known to having those wings in the past, and now you just lost those two. So now you're relying on Rodney Hood, and Zach Collins is injured now. So I'm really just looking. They might have the best backcourt in the league now that
McCollum and Lillard.
Now that Clay's out, I think McCollum and Lillard is definitely in the conversation for the best backcourt in the league. But other than those two, where are you going with the ball? So
exactly, and that's where Hassan Whiteside comes in. Can he score against the Anthony Davises, of the league, and the Joel Embiids of the league, and the Karl-Anthony Towns? You just don't see it, and maybe he's going to take a step forward this year, but I can see the Trailblazers having a similar season to last year, maybe not making it as deep in the playoffs, but like you said, their backcourt's there, but where's the points coming from other than that?
And I'm hopeful Nurkic can come back eventually. I'm not exactly sure what his timetable is at this very moment, but I know that gruesome injury that happened last year. I'm hopeful that he can come back and really be a good piece for them eventually, and just get back to where he was, because that was unfortunate that he couldn't be in the playoffs with them last year.
Still no timetable on Nurkic's return. He gets hurt late last year, misses a lot of time, especially in the playoffs. That's where Portland would have needed him. Another team that needs some front court help, the Warriors. Hassan Whiteside could score all over them. It's Steph Curry, Draymond Green, D'Angelo Russell fitting in, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Goodness.
There might be some G League teams that could give him a run. With Steph Curry, one of the best players on this planet, he can't do it all for him with scoring. I know seeing some defenses just basically playing box and ones on him. They're following him around all the way around the court. He's going to have their best defender on him every single night now. They don't have KD to worry about. They don't have Klay Thompson to worry about, especially knowing that Klay Thompson might not be back this entire year, according to Steve Kerr. So now Draymond might not even be your worst shooter on the court. So I really don't know where they're going, because when you take Steph Curry out, where are you going? Who's coming in for Steph Curry? And your front court?
Jordan Poole, man.
They had,
I know. I was watching them the other night, and I was kind of looking at their, who they had on the floor, and I was like, who is that?
Right, and I know their front court.
You're not used to that with the Warriors.
Like as the season started, just looking at their lineup wasn't great, but now they don't have Willie Cauley-Stein. They don't have Kevon Looney. Now they're starting either the likes of, they're going with Amari Spellman or any players like that.
Eric
Glenn
Powell.
Robinson.
Yeah, man.
Marquise Chris.
Marquise Chris. the defense there is abysmal. I mean, Lou Williams tore him up at the beginning of the season. He just casually strolled it into the lane and kind of planted a garden, mowed the lawn a little bit, cooked some dinner, and then threw in a layup. I mean, there was just nothing, and Draymond Green put it best.
I think
when he
that
just said they really, really stink. That word is exact words.
I think that the Warriors are a prime example of how big of a talent league the NBA is. When you look at who's won the last 5 or 6, 7 championships, they had really, really talented players. It wasn't who had the best schemes; it was who had the best players. And you have Kevin Durant, and you had Klay Thompson go down. Granted, 2 really good players, but you went from being one of the best teams in the league to now looking like one of the worst, just with losing 2 players. I mean that it's a five guy game, but it just shows that they're really relying on their 3 or 4 stars, and they didn't have a whole lot else, and that's kind of showing right now.
I wouldn't be surprised to see this be a 1997-ish Spurs season where the Warriors just kind of pack it in. Let Steph and Draymond play, but don't necessarily overexert them. Give them days off here and there so they still get their work in, they still get their numbers. But if you end up with 55 losses or so and you're in the conversation for the top pick, you get a really good player out of college, be it a Cole Anthony Edwards, James Wiseman, anyone like that. That could be good for the Warriors. The other thing I want to see happen so badly, this is the take I was teasing to you guys all week long. I'm busting it out here. Warriors trade D'Angelo Russell to the 76ers for Ben Simmons.
I think that would work a lot better for the Warriors because I think D'Angelo Russell seems a little lost on that team. He's going to get his numbers, but...
Do you think the Sixers want to do that, though?
That's my question, is that the Sixers...
After they saw him hit a three-pointer?
Listen to the... Okay, you got me
this
there.
Might be our guy.
Listen to the Sixers guard rotation right now. You've got Trey Burke. Yuck. Raul Neto. Who?
Yeah.
Furkan Korkmaz. They list as a guard. He's 6'7". From that, you've got Zaire Smith, who hasn't done anything yet, isn't a point guard.
Right.
You need someone to handle the ball. That's what Ben Simmons does. Simmons wants to get out, go in transition. Embiid wants to slow down, back you down to the post, and get his numbers that way. Stylistically, it doesn't work. If it doesn't work for the Sixers this year, if they can't get over that Giannis-sized mountain in the Eastern Conference, give me Ben Simmons as Draymond's replacement in Golden State. Put D'Angelo back in the Eastern Conference.
I agree with that.
I want to see it so bad.
Yes, and he doesn't have to shoot threes if he's with the Warriors because they need someone to drive. They have their three-point shooters. If you can get a guy to drive the lane consistently, kick it out if he has to either Klay or Steph, that's dangerous.
He would eat.
It would be so fun.
Absolutely.
I need to see it.
No, yeah, I would love it. I think the Sixers would be hesitant to do it because Ben Simmons is an amazing player and just purely on talent. I mean, Russell's an amazing player too, but Ben is just at that next level.
I think the Sixers would be losing more talent than they're gaining, though, if that did happen.
Because the Warriors wouldn't be able to offer him up in just about anything else. They'd give him Russell and a bag.
You could throw in like a Jacob Evans. I think Philadelphia would be interested in a Jacob Evans, 6'6", pretty solid defensively, can catch and shoot. You could throw in Eric Pahal, again, another kind of switchable guy that could fill almost an Al Horford-esque role if he grows up.
Right. I suppose you have some somewhat of some pieces. They could fill in your 12th man spot, I suppose, but
it's not going to happen. I just want to see it happen.
No, I'd like to see it. That's a great take. I guess we'll just have to wait and see with the Warriors specifically. I also worry for Steph's health. His ankles are glass, and I just don't want him to because he's gonna for them to win at all. He's gonna have to put up like 30-some a night, and the defense is gonna be clogging him.
And this just isn't. I agree with what you said earlier. This just isn't the year for Steph Curry to go hard every single night because you're not going to beat the West, the West teams consistently when they have so much more talent than you have.
And you don't want it to be a case where Klay Thompson comes back for next season and now Steph Curry's hurt because the whole last season he was exerting.
Develop your talent that you have that's young and inexperienced, and that will help you out going forward.
Austin Norman, Logan Scrabble, Elam Hansen with you here on the Unlimited Sports Podcast Network. We're previewing the NBA Western Conference. Guys, we're drawn to the end of our time here. We've still got a few questions to get through, though. Your sleeper team in the West to make the playoffs and who you think is maybe a popular pick to make it that you think falls out.
So I definitely think my sleeper team, if they're a sleeper team anymore, it's the Mavericks. I think that although they only have 2 stars, those guys can really light it up. And I think that although their other players are unproven, I think they really have a good baseline. I think Jalen Brunson's going to shock a lot of people. I think that Dwight Powell, Maxi Kleber, I think they, in the middle, aren't going to be completely incompetent. I think they can do what they need to. And Kristaps Porzingis is still, like, huge. That man is so tall. So I think if we're just talking about making the playoffs, I think they're a really big dark horse. I don't see it from the Pelicans yet. And I don't want to say – I definitely don't think the Warriors are going to make the playoffs. I don't think they're a hugely popular pick to make it. I think some people are picking them. I know Mark Stein, Charles Barkley said they were not going to make it. For me, I just don't see how the pieces will fit together, because even if Steph Curry gives you 30-some a night, even if Draymond Green gives you 10 to 15 a night, which is kind of his thing, and D'Angelo Russell goes off, you still need, 100-some points to win a game with they don't have any defense. So I just don't see anything there. So that's what I would say.
Okay. So I had 2. I also agree with you on the Mavericks. I think that Kristaps and Luka, I love that duo right there, but it does come down to who else is going to step up for them. And I think if they do find that 3rd and 4th guy and maybe a guy off the bench, they're a playoff team. My other team is the Pelicans. I think that the amount of talent that they have, young talent, if they can develop that and start to win some games and go on a run, I think that they can grab that 8th spot. It's going to be tough, and they're probably going to go out the first round, but just getting there would be huge for them and give Zion a little bit of playoff experience. But as long as he can, remain healthy and, the rest of the lineup, I think that they could be dangerous possibly. So those are my 2 picks.
Give me the Kings.
Give you the Kings still?
I believe.
They're
gonna turn around. Get the rotation figured out. Fox is gonna start playing well. I think the Kings will get it figured out. As tough as the West is, I think that division, there you look at that division, you've got Phoenix, Los Angeles, Golden State, Sacramento. There are 3 playoff teams in there.
Oh, for sure. I think someone's going to make it. I think it's either going to be, I don't think the Suns are quite there. So I think the Kings are there. I don't necessarily think the Warriors are there. For you, Austin, and you, Elam, as well, I think we all assume that the playoffs for the West are going to be the same, with the exception, I think the Lakers replace the Thunder. I think we can agree with that. And then if you're taking your sleeper team, who do you have replacing?
Elam, your Western Conference MVP.
Karl-Anthony Towns.
You're going with it, okay.
I think, granted, you do need a winning team most of the time to get that MVP, but I think that he just is going to put up – I think he's going to put up the most numbers overall in the NBA. But he's my number 1 pick. My other 2, I had 3. I think Anthony Davis, because I think that he is on the best team in the West, in my opinion, and he's going to put up the most numbers on the best team. And a lot of times, the best player on the best team, granted, I don't think he's better than LeBron, but I think he's going to put up more numbers than LeBron. So I think he is also a solid pick. And then Luka Doncic, he's a very skillful, artsy type player that you just don't look at as a guy that's going to put up a lot of numbers, but he does. He just simply does. And so he's a baller. So look for him as well.
Logan?
I'm going with James Harden. Not necessarily a sleeper pick by any means. I just think he puts up numbers, and even with Russell Westbrook on his team, he's still going to get his. It's still his team, and say what you want about how he plays basketball. Some people don't love it. He gets numbers, and so I think for that reason, he's going to carry Houston to just about where they were last season. I think they'll be okay. So
even with Westbrook on his team now?
I think so. I think that you've seen early in the season, he still gets his. He's not going to have every night where he goes out there, because there will be some Westbrook nights. But I think statistically, he's going to show that that's just the type of player he is. No matter what team he's on, he could be on an all-star team, like Western Conference All-Stars. He'll still go out there and just snipe. Just the fact that he gets so many points at the free throw line, that by himself, he'll just drive in. He'll get the foul. He'll get darn near 15 points at the free throw line just by doing that. So.
What do you think of his new move that he does, the off the 1 foot 3-point shot?
Man, I think he stole that from me.
Yeah.
This pick for me, I went a lot of ways on it. I didn't put any notes down here because I didn't even know where to start. as I've thought about it, give me LeBron. I think he coasted a little bit last year. I think he's going to be healthy this year, and it sounds like he's motivated. Now, I do worry a little bit that, okay, maybe he's a little old and he's a little washed up. Still, to me, I don't think anyone has knocked LeBron off his throne as basketball's best player when he's engaged. Yeah. He needs to show it more. I still trust LeBron more than anything. He'll play more games than Kawhi Leonard. With the whole load management thing, Leonard would probably be my second choice if he gets enough run. Maybe Anthony Davis in there third. Jokic maybe third for me as well. Give me the King, though. He's due for another one. I've been waiting to see this season for LeBron since the last one ended the way it did. I want to see a LeBron revenge tour, see him engaged again. I think we're going to get it more often than not, and I think it's going to be fun.
I like that pick. I'm a big LeBron guy.
Love it. All right, we'll wrap up the Western Conference Preview podcast with this most important question. Who are your playoff teams in the West? You can go in order or you can just name them off.
All right. Well, personally, I think that that front end, I think we all are very similar. We've got the Clippers, the Lakers, the Rockets, the Nuggets, the Jazz, the Trailblazers. So those are kind of my obvious picks. I think all of them won't have any problem making the playoffs, barring just some huge sleepers. I'm also picking the Spurs, and I'm picking the Mavericks as well. So notice I did not pick the Warriors there. That was my one team that from last season, the Thunder and the Warriors fell out. I picked the Lakers to go back in, and I picked the Mavericks to overtake the Warriors.
Unfortunately, I have the same exact list you did. I wanted to be different, but I just couldn't because what I see from these teams early on and who they have on their lineups, I couldn't pick anybody else. I think the Spurs is interesting because if the Spurs lineup was a different team, you probably wouldn't pick them to be in the playoffs. But because they're the Spurs, you got to put them in. And I think that the Mavericks are going to get it done. I think that they're going to sneak into that 8th spot. But like you said, the Clippers, Lakers, Jazz, Rockets, and Trailblazers and Nuggets, those teams are pretty solid locks, barring an injury. But those last two, I think are the interesting ones. But I think it is going to be the Spurs and the Mavericks.
I'm a little different than you guys. For the most part, it's the same. I'm going to go in order here for what I think seeding ends up. I'm going to go Clippers, Lakers, Nuggets, Jazz. Rockets slide down to the 5 seed. I'm not buying Harden and Westbrook, that pairing necessarily yet. I've got the Spurs in the 6th hole because I put them in over Portland. I don't quite trust Portland. Dame's really good. CJ's really good. I expect one of them to miss some time. I think Portland's going to crater a little bit without Nurkic. I think it's a slide that pushes San Antonio over them since San Antonio knows what it is. They're not working in a whole lot of young guys, but the ones that San Antonio does have are pretty solid. They know their job. And I still have the Kings sliding into that 8th spot. I think the Kings get a run sometime in the middle of the year, push them over. I'm not buying New Orleans this year. I'm not buying the Mavericks this year. I think the Mavericks aren't good enough defensively, as good as Luka and Kristaps are. I don't think Dallas has enough, so I go Clippers, Lakers, Nuggets, Jazz, Rockets, Spurs, Blazers, and Kings.
Right, and I guess I didn't put mine in order. That's very similar order to what I would have with the Mavericks replacing the Kings at the bottom. The one thing that I would probably change is having the Lakers down a spot or two, just based off of they will rest LeBron and AD sometimes, and they will make some boneheaded mistakes down the stretch. So, but other than that, I think we're very similar in our picks. Austin going with the Kings, Elam and I going with the Mavericks. But this is a very exciting season. So.
I am very excited to watch how it all plays out.
Halfway through with our preview, we'll break it up into 2 episodes, though. For Logan and Elam, this is Austin signing off. We'll be back to break down the Eastern Conference with you sometime in the near future. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.